Alright, welcome back to Roguetech, and welcome back to the comprehensive guide video series. So today, very straightforward, we're just going to go over the out-of-combat user interface for the game. Obviously, it's been changed a bit from the vanilla, but yeah, we'll go over all the details and nuance and have a good time doing it. So, starting in the top left corner, you will see your current icon, or shield, or whatever, badge, I guess, of your mercenary company, as well as its name. This can be changed in the Captain Quarters customized company, but we'll get to that in a bit. After that, you see the current finances. So whenever a financial report comes around, you can set the finances to normal, where there's no bonuses or penalties, spend more money to increase your mech tech and medical points, or not medical point. Actually, yeah, I think it is. Whatever. It increases your mech tech and morale, and I think maybe medical points. Not 100% on that one. Or you can decrease the funding to reduce mech tech and morale, but you'll be able to save C-bills for that particular financial report. After that, you will see the number of days remaining in the current financial report, and the amount of C-bills you need at the end of the financial report. So, whenever it's getting closer, it's important to keep an eye on it to make sure you don't go bankrupt. But to help with that, you'll see these little ticks, and each one of these represents one financial report worth of funding. So with our current balance, we have 7 financial reports worth of C-bills. So if we don't buy anything, sell anything, make any changes in our mech bay, or drop on any missions, anything, we'll be able to survive for 7 financial reports with our current funding and our current funds. If you increase or decrease the funding level, that will update to the new funding level. So if you're, for example, extravagant, where you're paying, I think, a 50% increase or something like that, you're paying more C-bills for that financial report, those ticks will update to show how many financial reports of extravagant spending you have remaining. Likewise, if you drop it down to Spartan, which is the highest penalties but saves the most C-bills per financial report, it will show more months or more financial reports worth of funding. So even if it shows you have another financial report or 2 or whatever worth and you're on Spartan, once you go over the financial report and say switch it to extravagant, that may suddenly turn from 2 financial reports remaining to 0. And in addition to that, whenever you are just in the overworld, or not overworld, in the management interface, if it's white, that means you have at least 2 financial reports worth of funding at the current level. Yellowish, orangish is 1 financial report, so you're able to pay that financial report, and then afterwards you'll be running low on funds. And if it's red, that means if the financial report comes around and you're not out of the red yet, it will bankrupt you when the financial report hits. Underneath that, we have morale, and morale largely has 2 impacts on the game. The first is it is a requirement for certain events that can happen while you pass time or travel or whatnot. If you have very low morale, that allows you to have some pretty bad events happen, and high morale likewise will allow you to potentially get some positive events that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get. The other major impact it has, if you hover over the number here, it will show you how much resolve you generate per turn in combat. The higher your morale, the more you generate, and the lower your morale, the less you generate. The bar is largely meaningless other than just as a glance indicator of do you have good morale, okay morale, or terrible morale. And that's basically it. You can actually look at, if you hover over the little icon, it will show you the current morale and the current bracket that you're in, which also is indicated by the little ticks here. So as long as you're between those 2, which is steady morale, 16 to 25, that is the okay territory. Above that is better, below that's worse, but this is the standard morale. Below that, we have Mech Tech. Mech Tech has two primary impacts. The first and most obvious is it increases or decreases the speed of repairs and refits in your mech bay. So the higher your tech points, the better. It does not increase cost at all of repairs, refits, or whatnot. The financial requirements are completely unaffected by mech tech, but the speed is very much impacted. In addition to that, we'll get to it whenever we get to the mech bay, but when you're building a new chassis, or when you're putting together mech parts to cobble together a chassis, the number of tech points you have is plugged into a formula based on the tonnage of the chassis and the value of the chassis and things to determine what your chance is of having locations and components intact when you put the pieces together. So higher mech tech means you're more likely to get a mech chassis that's in good shape, in good condition, with components intact. Also, the heavier the mech, the larger the mech tech required for a good result, and the lighter the mech, the lower value the mech, the less mech tech you need for a good result. And it is worth noting, I'm just going to make the point right now, when you adjust your financial report spending, say you go extravagant and you get the bonus mech tech, that does impact the condition when you put the pieces together to build a new mech chassis. Likewise, if you're on Spartan and you're losing mech tech, it actually does impact when you put pieces together to build a mech chassis. So if you have a mech chassis that you're interested in building and potentially running, or even more importantly, if you have multiple chassis to build, it's very much worthwhile to, at the very least, wait until a Spartan financial report ticks over before you build them. And even if you have several to build or several high-value chassis to put together, it can very much be worth bumping your spending up to extravagant to build mechs. It will both increase the mech tech to make those new builds get done faster, as well as increase the chance for the chassis to be in good shape and to have components intact, which, the better shape the chassis is in, the less C-bills it will take to repair it and get it combat ready. So you can actually save money by going extravagant before you build new chassis. And then medical points, very straightforward. The medical points determine how quickly your injured mech warriors and tank commanders recover. It also comes in on some different events and things, but for the most part, it's just how quickly do your injured mech warriors and tank commanders return to combat. All these are buttons. We will go over them one at a time in a moment, but first let's jump to the top right corner here. The funding level. These are the C-bills you have on hand. If this is ever negative, you need to get it positive before you pass another day, or you will lose the run. You will lose the playthrough. So it's important to keep this above negative. Now, one nuance that a lot of people don't know is if you have negative funds, as long as you don't pass a day, you can drop on missions to get above negative. As long as you don't pass a day, the playthrough will not end and you will not bankrupt. So just try to keep it positive. If it's negative and you have the mechs to drop, possibly go on a mission or sell things, scrap things to get into a positive before you pass a single day. That button is just the menu button. Timeline. This is going to show everything that's coming that you have going on. Injured, fatigued, mech warriors, and tank commanders will be listed here and how many days left before they recover. The financial report will always be visible or always be present to, let you know how close you are to the next one. And any mech builds or repairs that you have going on in the mech bay will be listed here as well. If you click on the Manage Tasks button, it brings up this user interface that specifically will show all of the mech bay tasks and allow you to rearrange them or stop work on them to get the balance that you paid to get it done refunded. So this can be very useful if you just finished a mission, but one of your mechs got severely damaged and you decide you just want to scrap it instead of rebuilding it. You can just pop this open, cancel work on that mech, and then close it or organize however you want. Whenever you do have work being done in the mech bay, there will be a button up and down arrows to adjust the order that things are being worked on. And I believe it's shift. If you hold shift, you can click the up or down arrow to put it to the top or bottom of the list. Just a little shortcut. If it's not shift, it's alt, but I'm pretty sure it's shift. I guess I could test it. I'll probably test it whenever we get to the next video of the comprehensive guide and I'm messing with the mech bay repairs, refits, and stuff. I'll make sure and confirm. But for now, for this video, I'm pretty sure it's shift to put something to the top or bottom of the repair order. Now then, bottom right corner. This button makes it go away or come back. That's it. It lists the name of the current system you're in. It shows an icon which represents what type of system it is. So this is a Terran system, i.e. it has a planet that has deserts and mountains and forests and oceans and things. This doesn't really have much impact. I mean, other than the mission types available, but like the icon itself and the name of the system don't really have an impact. The the population listed does have a small impact on store availability of items. The larger the population, the slightly better equipment and gear you'll find in the store. And if there is no population, if it is uninhabited, there will not be a store. Or at the very least, there won't be components to the store. I think you still have access to buying vehicles if it's uninhabited. Don't quote me on that one. I don't usually go to uninhabited planets. So, in addition to that, it shows the current faction that is in control of this system. Whenever we get to the store interface, you'll see some of the impact that has. The icon for that particular faction, which hovering over it also tells you a little bit about the faction. And then this little icon here is your reputation indicator for the faction of the system you're currently in. You can see very, very simple summary right there. You always start friendly with whatever faction you chose as your background. So when you start a new campaign, the fact that I picked a Davian start meant that I am friendly with Davian at the start, which Davian is the Federated Sons. The house that rules the Federated Sons is House Davian. And it is worth noting, very important here, the reputation, if it is too low, you will not be able to access the store. So if you're traveling to a planet with a faction that absolutely hates you, you will not be able to buy or sell. Well, actually, no, I think you can still sell, you just don't get nearly as much money for selling. But you can't buy anything at a store if the faction that controls the system hates you that much. Other than that, very much it shows you the store markup, it shows you the job payout. Hiring hall and store. The store button does the exact same thing as the store button over here that we will get to in a moment. Hiring hall, I think this is the only place to actually get to the hiring hall. And as soon as I finish these last 2 points, we'll go check that out. Now, this down here, in New Avalon System, that's just telling you you're not traveling, which means you can access the store. You can always look at the store, regardless of whether you're in orbit or jumping between systems or whatever, but you can only buy and sell if you are in orbit of a planet. This highlighted orbit shows we're in orbit. If we started traveling, it would go to transit, and then once we reached jump ship to travel between systems, it would highlight the jump ship icon. Worth noting, every time you jump, so when you travel to a jump ship and then faster than light travel from one system to another, that costs C-bills because in the Battletech universe, almost all faster than light travel is controlled and run and made publicly available via the faction Comstar. They're basically space AT&T. That's the running joke for the universe, and it's fairly accurate. So whenever you are traveling between systems, there will always be at least one jump to travel between different systems, and you will pay a travel amount, a balance, that is deducted at the time of the jump. So when we get to navigation, you'll see there's a travel cost. That travel cost is deducted in pieces while jumping. So the jump ship is where you pay the travel cost that you agree to. not when you click travel. That used to trip me up a little bit, but I've learned. And finally, here in the center of the screen, got the pretty little Argo here, and this entire image is mostly for just aesthetics, although it does show if you're currently docked to a jump ship, jumping between systems, or if you're traveling from orbit to jump ship, or from a jump ship to orbit. You'll see the Argo traveling through space. Week 1, day 1 does not matter. It just shows you how long you've been playing in this particular run. The little tech marks here, that's just the day of the week. As far as I know, there's not really anything that either of these impacts in any way, shape, or form. This big glowing, pulsing timeline paused, it's literally what it looks like. It's just telling you that the timeline is currently paused. And then this play button, if it's actively playing, if you're advancing time, it will be a pause button instead. And that's all there is to it. If it's play and you click it, you start passing days. If it's a pause icon and you click it, you stop passing days. So, before we actually do that and show you a couple of the other interfaces, let's start with the hiring hall and then go through each of these menus or each of these buttons as we go. So, hiring hall. When you click it, you get this interface. In the top left, you'll see how many berths you have, how many bunks you have in your Argo that you can put Mechwarriors and tank commanders in. At start, I think you always start 7 out of 8 because you have a commander, and I think you always start with 6 Mechwarriors. Or does? I'm pretty sure the commander takes a bunk. Don't quote me on that. We'll figure it out in a second when we go to the barracks. But this interface over on the right shows you the details of the currently selected Mechwarrior/tank pilot. You see the reputation price increase as well as the icon for the faction that controls the system, and the green is the, again, faction reputation. So that does impact the amount you pay to hire them, not their monthly rate. So the base salary here is not going to have anything to do with whatever faction you hire, the system that you hire them at. This only impacts this one-time fee. So for hiring Mechwarriors and tank commanders, it's not that big of a deal if you're hiring them from a planet that, is run by somebody who hates you. Top right corner is just the system name, who cares? The max injuries, this is going to be 3 unless they have a quirk that increases it, like athletic, for example. The portrait, that's what you're gonna see whenever you hire them in the barracks. In the mission at the bottom of the user interface for the mission, you'll see their portrait to keep track of who they are. Here, you'll see it on the left. This entire bar is obviously here on the left as well. So everything I say here also applies to that. The little icon here shows what type of Mechwarrior or pilot it is. Basically, they're either a Ronin, which is a unique character with unique quirks and things, or they are a recruit, which is, a low, fresh, horrible. No, not horrible. You can use them. Anyway, they usually have lower quirk numbers, like lower numbers of quirks, and they cost less per month, or per financial report as a result. And then you'll see here, this is a veteran, and this is a regular. The reason they are red is because you need MRB rating to be able to hire them. MRB rating is literally just a bar that fills up every time you drop on a mission. I think if you fail a mission with a bad faith effort, you lose MRB rating. But as long as you're completing missions, or at the very least getting a good faith effort failure, I think your MRB rating just steadily rises. So you have to have enough MRB to be able to hire any particular person. The icons next to their name are mech or vehicle. If they have both, that means they can pilot both. You can put them in a mech, you can put them in a vehicle, you can bounce them back and forth between the two. If it's just the one, like Jazz here, can only pilot tanks or vehicles. That includes VTOLs and things. And the mech-only icon means they can only be put in mechs. So, that's that. These little squares will show, you see here, the Scoundrel. Scoundrel has two abilities unlocked because of his 5 piloting, 5 guts, and Rose here has an ability unlocked for her 5 guts. Hilt and Raven and Jazz do not have any because their stats are too low. Often it's better to hire somebody who does not already have a trait chosen, because it costs 500,000 C-bills to retrain a Mechwarrior or tank commander and give them the particular skills that you want, unless they happen to have the exact skills you want. For example, Rose here already has Juggernaut, which if you're looking for a melee Mechwarrior, then she already has it. So if you were going to get it anyway, there you go. The description is largely just fluff until you get down to the bottom, and then you can see the quirks. You can also see the quirks by hovering over them over here on the left side. So the pop-up, or the hover tooltip, is the much faster way than scrolling down through all of this. So that's usually the best. Every quirk is from a certain list of quirks, and the Ronins have more quirks than the non-Ronins. The main benefit to taking a Mechwarrior or tank commander who is not a Ronin is you can change their call sign and you can change their portrait. I think you can also change their voice.
Waiting for orders.
Don't quote me on that one.
Yes, Commander.
Don't quote me on that one, but I know for a fact you can change their call sign and their portrait, so. Yep, that's essentially it for this interface. I mean, you can also hear what voice pack they use by clicking on them.
I'm here.
So, yeah, hire button hires them, and that's it for the hiring hall. So, now the Argo button returns to this screen. The Argo button is just there to get you back to the ability to pass time or not. The store, which again you can access from the bottom right. When you open the store, you are greeted by this interface. It's broken down pretty easily. Do note that if you're playing the online map as part of the online war community, which I think I made mention of that during setup, but you have to actually be like vetted and included in the Mech, the online war community to impact the map and gain access to the faction stores. But if you do have, if you are on the online map, you will see a tab up here for the faction store, and I think also the black market, unless they changed it since the last time I played on the online map. But if not, you will see the system store, the faction store, and buyback. Buyback is very self-explanatory. If you sell something, you go here and you buy it back. So if you accidentally sold something you didn't want to, it's right there. Go get it. The faction store is only available once you, I believe, ally with the faction, unless they've changed that at some point. You may be able to access it now if you're just high enough reputation, but I'm fairly sure you have to actually be allied to the faction to be able to buy from the faction store. And then this is just the basic system store that is available. We're going to skip all this for a second and go down to buying and selling. Always make sure you know which one you're looking at so you don't accidentally sell a mech or vehicle or accidentally buy a mech or vehicle. Selling something like equipment is not a big deal because you can, as soon as you realize, oh, I thought I was buying that, you can go to buyback and immediately get it back. But if you accidentally buy something, like say I was like, oh, I don't want this Mantis, I'm going to sell it, but I was on buying, the only way to get that 2.1 million C-bills back would be to reload a save. So be very careful that you stay aware of whether you're buying or selling at, while you're looking at the list. At the top, there's breakdowns for all weapons, ammo, equipment, and mechs. I often forget to use these shortcuts, but especially if you're just looking at ammo, it's very helpful. Also, underneath that, depending on what you're looking at, you will see the option to sort or break down what you're looking at into the different things, like jump jets, cooling and engine, and accessories, upgrades, whatever. So if you're looking for very specific things, like a common thing is to look for ammo. If you have a weapon system, like say you have mortars and you don't have any mortar ammo, it's very common to go to store and then just look at the ammo. But I always enjoy scrolling through and looking just to see what's on offer, just in case there's something that I wasn't necessarily looking for that I see and go, huh, I'll take that. And then finally, the right side here, same as hiring hall, faction, how much they like or hate you, what that does to the pricing. This does apply to buy and sell. So again, if they really hate you, you're going to sell for less C-bills than if you travel to a planet with somebody who loves you and sell to them. This is just fluff icon. This is just an icon of whatever it is. Obviously, weapons and ammo do not have it. You will see the just breakdown. This is the exact same information that would be given to you if you hovered it in the mech bay for equipment and ammo. But whenever you're looking at a mech, this is the comprehensive view of everything you need to know about the mech or vehicle. You will see the tonnage. You will see the class of the chassis. The 0 out of 20 here, there's not another mech, but that is jump jets, and I believe that always just shows the maximum available if you put the biggest engine core possible into it. Don't quote me on that. I don't really use jump jets much, but that's really a preference thing. However, these icons are very important. The 0 out of 0 here for ballistic hardpoints means you cannot use any ballistic weapons, machine guns, autocannons, nothing will go on this mech. It does not have the ability to carry them. Whereas it has access to 3 energy hardpoints, 2 missile hardpoints, and 1 support hardpoint. This does not show you where on the mech they are, and there's a big difference between, for example, a missile hardpoint in an arm and a missile hardpoint in the head. So, very, very quick overview of what's available. This does not give you enough information to really make the decision, but it's nice whenever it is a full, for example, this particular chassis, if we bought it for 4.75 mil, does have 3 energy and 2 missile weapons already installed, so you can scroll down the equipment list over here, the list of things, and you can see, oh, the left arm has 1 missile hardpoint and 1 energy hardpoint. The right arm has 2 energy hardpoints, and the right torso has 1 missile hardpoint. So you can get an idea of where they go there without having to open it in the mech bay to see. Now, if it was, for example, the support hardpoint, there's no way to tell where that support hardpoint is until you buy the mech and look at it in the mech bay. These little indicators don't really mean much at all. The ones that actually will tell you kind of what's going on here is the heat efficiency and the movement. But again, all of these are just dependent on what's currently equipped. So unless you're planning on buying it and dropping it without any modification to the chassis or its equipment, these are kind of meaningless. But apparently with the torso having the 250 core, it's showing that it has 5 boxes, 5 marks here for movement. That is a 5.7 move, I believe, and you can figure that out more easily than looking at the movement. Well, I say more easily. Glancing at the movement to see if it's a Irby waddling around at like 1 hex per move, or if it's a cicada or something with a crazy high movement. But you can just figure it out by looking at the engine core, taking the rating of the engine core, and dividing by whatever tonnage the mech is. So with the exact same 250 core, a 50-ton mech can move at 5 hexes per turn walking, whereas a 10-ton, if you're running a proto-mech, I don't even know if you're able to put engine cores on proto-mechs, but just theoretically, if you put a 250 core in a proto-mech that only weighed 10 tons, excuse me, if you put a 250 core in a proto-mech that only weighs 10 tons, it would be able to move at 25 hexes. However, it would also be a lot harder to fit the 15.5 ton engine into the thing. Likewise, if you put that on a 100-ton mech, it would have a 2.5, which I'm pretty sure rounds down to 2. hex move, but the having ratings in between the whole, like having a 250 core in a 100-ton mech will make it sprint slightly further, usually about 1 hex further, than if you had just a 200 core in a 200-ton mech. I mean, a 100-ton mech. Whew. But other than that, the heat efficiency, if the bar is full, it means it's heat neutral. If the bar is not full, it means completely different things based on what type of heatsink kit it's running. I'll definitely do a full overview of engines, engine heatsinks, and heatsink kits and things later on in the series, but yeah, I went way more in depth than I needed to on the movement because, yeah, reasons. In any case, the heat efficiency, if it's full, that means that it has heat neutrality, so if you drop it in a standard biome, it will not generate heat when it fires. Vehicles don't have that because vehicles do not generate heat. Other than that, vehicles also, unless they changed. Actually, I should check the mech bay before I say anything more about vehicles in case something has changed. I don't really use vehicles. Just, that's a preference thing. In any case, yeah, so that is basically the entire store. I failed to mention earlier whenever I was talking about the mechs, whenever you're building them or whatever. Actually, wait, did I? Man, I'm losing track of what I already covered and didn't. Well, the quirk you can see by hovering the mech. It will tell you the quirk is easy to maintain. It will not tell you what it does until you go in the mech bay and look. I'm hoping with the save break that should be coming later this month that they actually fix that and let you see exactly what the quirk does before you buy or build the mech. Because sometimes the multiple chassis that you're choosing from to build have different quirks, and the only way to really figure out what they do is either know offhand or go look it up on the wiki. Then the affinities, that is unlocked by how many missions that particular Mechwarrior has dropped in that type of chassis. Worth noting, it is the chassis, not the mech. So if you have 3 different trebuchets, the Mechwarriors that are dropping and building affinity in the trebuchets can bounce between whichever trebuchet you want and still have that affinity unlocked. And the different affinities for different mechs do different things. So, yeah, that's that. And then obviously bottom right corner is the buy button, so if you click that, you buy it. I think there's actually, there's a confirmation dialog that pops up when you click buy to confirm if you really want to spend that much on that thing. So, other than that, that is the entire store interface. And yeah, let's move on to the command center now. The command center, the first time you open it after a financial report or after traveling to a planet, it will generate a list of contracts. We will go over contracts in more detail once we're ready to drop on the first mission, but I'm just going to say right now, command center button brings you to the contracts, and we're going to leave all of that for once we're deciding on contracts. Because that's a whole thing, tons of different things, the colors mean different things, etc. Offhand, just the first thing to note is that the skulls mean different things. This half skull is much different from this 4 skull because the 4 skulls are orange and the half skull is purple, which means the difficulty is broken down based on half skull increments. So a difficulty 0 mission has no skulls. A difficulty 1 mission has 1/2 of a green skull. Orange is the second pass through and purple is the third pass through, which means this, with 4 red skulls, is a 9 skull mission or an 18 difficulty, whereas the half purple skull is a 21 difficulty, which is 10.5 skulls. But other than that, like I said, we're going to leave Command Center for once I come back to actually drop on the first mission of the playthrough. Barracks. I'm going to leave this specifically for when I come in and talk about all the different quirks and all of the different abilities you can pick, leveling stuff up, service record, all that. That's all going to be covered in the Mechwarrior and Tank Commander episode for the guide.
Check out this
the Mech Bay.
Commander. Pretty great, right?
Again, I'm going to leave this for when I cover the mech bay in more detail, but for just the user interface purpose, components shows you a list of all the loot you have, all the ammo, equipment, and weapons, which can be sorted. Storage shows you the partial salvage of mechs and vehicles you have. The mech bay shows you how many mechs you have, and the Bay 2 and Bay 3 are unlocked with the upgrades from the Argo that unlock the Mech Bay 2 and 3. Vehicle Bay and Battle Armor Bay likewise get increased whenever you have the upgrades on the Argo for the additional Mech Bays. You cannot refit vehicles, so vehicles have a stock loadout. And this is what it is. Whatever vehicle you have, when you click it and you look on the right, you will see its loadout. And mechs, whenever you click on the refit button, it will bring you into the full-blown mech lab where you will be able to make all sorts of modifications. The things that I will touch on here is you can pivot around in the mech bay the 3D model to see what it looks like. And you can change the camo pattern. Oh, you can't change camo pattern on vehicles. Noted. Oh, no, wait. Hold on. Can we? Can we? I just realized I had switched to mech bay. So, here we have this camo pattern. It looks the same. Wait. Okay, it has stripes on the butt. Still has stripes on the butt. Like, is this changing at all? I do not know. I do not see... maybe I'm just blind, but I do not see any changes. Maybe it's just because it's a VTOL. I don't know. But for mechs, you can change the pattern of the camouflage. Here you see this yellow and blue type thing. And here you see it's yellow inner legs and chest and blue around the outsides. How do you get those colors selected? That is in your Captain's Quarters customized company, which we'll get to in just a moment. But again, all the additional info here for the mech bay I will cover probably next time. I'll probably do 2 separate videos for the Barracks, Mechwarrior upgrades and skills and things, and then one for mech bay. Now then, engineering.
Welcome to engineering.
This is the Argo upgrade interface. All the things that are grayed out, you cannot upgrade yet, and every one of them has requirements. For example, the Mech Bay 2, you'll see in red here, repaired power conduits. So in order to be able to build this Mech Bay 2, you will need to first unlock the repaired power conduits upgrade. And that is under power systems. This is always the first upgrade I recommend, in part because it's only 77,000 C-bills and 10 days for a tech point. And it's the requirement for many of the other upgrades in the Argo. So, the interface for an upgrade is requirements, icon, which has no actual meaning. It's just the icon for it. It does, I guess, tell you what kind of upgrade it is, but other than that, Name is completely irrelevant. Purchase cost. This is the one-time cost that you pay when you tell it to upgrade. So you click purchase, you immediately pay this, and then after the completion time, which for this is 10 days, it's complete and you never have to worry about that again. However, the average costs is how much it costs for the rest of your playthrough every financial report. And this is increased or decreased based on the funding level of the financial report. The effects, the glowing thing is what it does, and the text underneath is just kind of the fluff. She says stuff, it doesn't really matter. So, when you click purchase, there is no chance to back out. Once you click purchase, you are committed to it. So, upgrade in progress being listed here does show that we are currently upgrading something and cannot start anything else. I'll just go ahead and include a quick rundown of, well, no, I'll make a micro video that just goes over all of the different upgrades for the Argo. We're just going to try to finish this up pretty quick. Navigation.
Hello, Commander. The Argo may not
The
be fully
quick little
functional.
tutorial here is whatever. It's mostly talking about these filters in the top right, which we will cover in a separate video. I'm already at 40 minutes here, and I'm trying to keep these videos more concise. So, the star map and navigation will cover the next video, but I do want to stress right now, every single start, I'm pretty sure, starts at a higher challenge system, in part because the challenge of the system does influence what is available in the shop. So you start on a plan or on a system where you have access to better things in the shop, with the understanding that you're probably going to spend a week or two modifying your starting mechs anyway. When you go to another planet, the challenge that you want to be looking for at the very start of the playthrough is either, well, basically, based on the difficulty variance you have, you want enough challenge to have at least half and one skull missions, and preferably a variety of them. So the closer you are to one skull, the better selection of missions you'll have. So traveling immediately upon starting a playthrough to a one-ish skull system, half skull, 1.5 skulls, something like that, is very much ideal. Because you're not going to be able to drop, again, if I go to the command center, with your starting lance, you are not going to be able to drop successfully on a 9.5 skull mission. That's just not possible. You have like medium mechs and trashy medium mechs at that, and maybe, and some lights, and they're going to be dropping pretty high, high efficiency, high value assault mechs on a 9 skull mission. So you will just get completely trashed. And like I said, I'll leave navigation at that for now. Command staff. This doesn't really do... Hey, back out of that. Command staff doesn't really do anything. If you click on one of them, you can talk, and they will talk about stuff. Basically, it's a more fluffy way of interacting with the tutorial system. The one thing to note is if you go talk to Sumire,
How can I help, Commander?
you can... Yeah, here we go. Let's talk about keeping the Mechwarrior safe during combat extractions. What this does is whenever you're withdrawing from a mission. So, unlike in vanilla, if you click, forfeit the mission, it instantly ends, you get all your mechs in their current state, done, deal, no problem. In Roguetech, you have to wait for Sumire to fly by and pick you up. What this lets you do with Sumire is pay an amount of C-bills to both decrease the duration you have to survive to get evac'd, as well as reduce the amount of damage that you take or the amount of damage that the dropship takes while extracting you. So, just clicking through Lightwing here, you can see a light aerospace wing is 3 to 4 round delay for withdrawal, and yes, that is shorter than if you do not have any protection. The Leopard suffers 20% of ground damage, which is if everything on the ground were to alpha strike the Leopard while it comes in and extracts you, you will take that much damage, well, 20% of that much damage, and have to repair it afterwards. So you have to pay a fee to repair based on how much damage that the Leopard takes. And then 30,000 a month maintenance. So if we do that,
Good day, Commander.
we now have... Wait, did it actually... Future me has put a notation here if it actually shows that amount or not. I'm pretty sure it does. Anyway, if we go back and talk to Sumire again...
How can I help, Commander?
Talk about keeping them safe during extraction. Doesn't sound cheap. And can we go without aerospace coverage? Lets you stop. Actually, heck, we're about to see.
I'll be here if you need me.
And okay, yeah, future me is gonna deal with it. My brain is mush right now, so whatever. But you pay a amount per financial report to have the aerospace fighters protecting you so that you can get out of a bad situation faster. I will absolutely be using that during the Challenge Run Mark III because, yeah, losing your entire lance is much, much more devastating than just paying 30, 50, however many thousand C-bills per financial report. And then Captain's Quarters. Memorial I'll jump to first because it is, as you would expect, a memorial to every Mechwarrior and pilot commander that you have lost so far in your playthrough. And then Captain's Quarters. Finances gives you a full breakdown of your operating costs. Here we go. Okay, so even though we canceled it, we're still having to pay for this first financial report where we said, yeah, let's hire them. It's just we've canceled the re-upping, the recurrence of paying for it. So that's why it confused me, is 338 looks a lot like 388, so my eyes didn't pick up the difference. And then the salary cost shows your Mechwarrior breakdown. So you see Argo versus Mechwarrior, how much you're actually paying. So there you go. Now then, in addition to that, the Captain's Quarter has the reputation breakdown. This is where you would ally with a faction once you have a high enough rating with them. I believe it's a 80. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's 80 reputation you need with a faction to ally with them. Allying with a faction greatly increases the C-bill payout and salvage offered by that faction in combat. When you're dropping for missions with an allied faction, you get much better rewards. Now then, the most fun part of all of this. Oh, also, real quick, when you ally with a faction, all of that faction's enemies will immediately set your reputation with them, I believe, to 0. It's been a while since I allied with a faction, and last time I'm pretty sure it set all of the enemy reputation to 0. So even if you are beloved by multiple Inner Sphere houses, the second you pick sides, everyone else is like, okay. And then the most fun starting option in the game is the Customize Company button here, which, when you click it, brings up this lovely interface. You can rename your lance, or not lance, your company, whatever you want. So you can literally name it whatever you want. The icon, cool, pressing enter actually, instead of just, neat. So don't press enter there unless you want to click on save. The crest that you're using is both next to the company name there as well as showing here. Sometimes it'll load the crests at random multiple times, and you just, whenever you pick one, there we go. Whenever you pick one, it changes. Click save to save it. And then over here, you'll see this atlas. This atlas is just showing a atlas color scheme, one of the camo patterns for an atlas. But it lets you see the primary color whenever you change it. It's different for every camo pattern, what parts of the mech are primary, secondary, or accent. But you can kind of get an idea. The primary color is going to be, the one that's the largest surface area of the mech, usually. The secondary color is going to be the second most surface area of the mech, and the accent color is going to largely just be a couple little bits here and there. And that's it. Once you've changed your colors, changed your crest, and renamed your company, you basically never have to go back here again. And for the rest of the playthrough, your mechs will look based on what color scheme you picked, and your in combat, the icon identifying your mechs versus enemy versus ally will be whatever the particular emblem you chose is. So, the last point I'm going to make, which I'm probably going to make again at the start of the next one, or at the very least at the start of the Mech Bay one, so that people who are new don't miss it. I'm going to go over the event pop-up interface by passing the first day. So when you start a new playthrough, because of the way that vanilla Battletech is coded, the Roguetech modders cannot pop up an event until you pass a day. They can't just have it pop up when you start the game. So in order to get your commander reward, for example, I believe we picked the Bushwhacker for this commander, in order to get that reward, you have to pass 1 day. And doing so will pop up the event Commander Gear, which is where you get to pick exactly, or you get to receive whatever you picked for the commander. Worth noting, at some point during this interface, you do, if you start with the soldier start or with the AWACS or whatever start, you do have options that you select to determine what your loot box is. And this is the loot box screen. The key times that you get a loot box is resolution for an event, resolution of a flashpoint, or if you take part in the conquest or raiding of a planet and your faction that you're fighting for wins, you will get a loot box for that in the Wartech 2C map. But we'll talk about that when we go over the navigation. For now, this is the loot box, and this is the interface that pops up whenever you build or receive a mech for whatever reason. It just shows the name of the mech, the description, which sometimes is inaccurate because a lot of times there will be specialist mechs that have the same description as other mechs chassis of the same type, but the actual details will be a little different. Here in this interface, there are 3 things worth noting, as you can see down here in red. The quirk, every mech has a quirk. Narrow low profile, I just know offhand, is +1 defense, but there's no way to really know what the quirk does until you look at it in the mech bay. Drop cost multiplier, so anytime you drop in a mission, which we'll go over when we do the mission and command center part of the guide series, drop cost just means dropping this mech is 10% more expensive than dropping a similar, completely comparable mech that has a drop cost multiplier of 1. Some drop cost multipliers are much higher than others. For example, Omni-mechs often have an incredibly high drop cost multiplier compared to junkier mechs, lower tech mechs. And then finally, in my opinion, the most important thing to notice, both when you're looking at salvage, partial mech salvage, as well as when you actually build a mech, is the arm actuator limit. This can either be not even present. If you don't see it here, that means the mech has standard full arms that are shoulder, upper arm, lower arm, hands. If it doesn't say anything about an actuator limit, that's what they have. 2 arms with everything involved. Here, you see the actuator limit left arm lower, right arm lower. If it said left arm lower, it would be a lower actuator on the left arm, but the right arm would be a hand. If it says left arm lower, right arm upper, that means the left arm has a lower arm actuator and the right arm does not. The reason a lower arm actuator matters is because it does give increased accuracy and I think melee on punches for a mech that has a lower, and every mech that has hands also has a lower that the hand is attached to. So in universe, the reason that gives you an accuracy bonus is because instead of having to aim your torso at the target, your arms are able to move a little bit freely from where you're pointing your mech to more accurately lead targets and things. So the last option that an arm actuator limit could be is Omni. Omni means that by default it has just uppers and shoulders. However, there are pieces of equipment that you can attach to an Omni upper actuator to put on an Omni lower actuator and Omni hands. You have to have hands to be able to use handheld equipment, obviously, and you can get lower arm accuracy on an Omni-mech's arms by using an Omni lower. However, there are limitations to the types of weapons you can use and if you use a special, there's a couple specialist lower actuators that will increase or decrease melee damage and things like that. If it's not an Omni actuator, you cannot put it on an Omni-Mech, and if it is an Omni actuator, you cannot put it on a non-Omni-Mech. And that is a whole lot of information dump. So, yeah, that's the entire out-of-combat interface, at the very least, mentioned. As I said, next we'll go over the command, or the barracks, the command center, and mech bay at appropriate times. But for now, that has been your episode of the Comprehensive Roguetech Guide series. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, have a good one.